is at 6 p.m. on the 18th of January 2008 in a residential home in Jeff Davis County, Georgia, USA. 52-year-old Gary and his wife Rita were preparing dinner. Just then the phone at home suddenly rang, and on the other end was their daughter Nicole's panicked and desperate cries. "Oh my God, someone is shooting at me. Someone is shooting at my car." The whole house immediately became alert. Gary tried to stay calm and ask where Nicole was, but before he could say anything the call was cut off. The cold silence felt like a heavy punch to his heart. He knew Nicole was in extreme danger, so he immediately called the police. The information they had was very limited. They only knew that Nicole was driving a silver Chevrolet and might be on Highway 221 somewhere between Uvalde and Hazelhurst. The police acted quickly and began searching along the road. Finally, about 1 kilometer from the Altamaha River, they found the described silver car. It was parked next to a row of buildings, with the lights on and the engine running. But the woman driving it had been killed, bloodied and lying on the center console. With her, he noticed that the rear window was shattered by bullets, and there was a scratch on the roof where a bullet had scraped past. Most importantly, there was a bullet hole in the headrest of the passenger seat. Based on the trajectory of the bullets, it seemed the shooting had initially occurred while the car was moving, and the additional bullet holes were caused by the shooter firing from behind during the pursuit. The police continued their search along the car's route and found more .45 caliber shells, confirming that the shooting continued and indicating that the shooter had a clear motive. It seemed the entire pursuit was aimed at killing Nicole, with a clear element of revenge. In most murder cases, especially those involving women, the police would start by investigating the victim's emotional relationships. What was Nicole's usual life like? Was she married or divorced? These questions became key for the investigation. Fortunately, Nicole had a close relationship with her family. The police obtained many important details from her father, including the fact that Nicole had just completed her divorce from her husband Damon 4 days before the incident, and that day was also when they were supposed to exchange custody of their child. Nicole had gone out to hand over the child to Damon. Clearly, Damon was at the Montgomery County Police Department was only about 18 miles away from the scene, so it was possible for Damon to reach the police station within 15 minutes if he drove fast. But when the police met with Damon at the station, they realized the situation was not as simple as it seemed. Damon gave a detailed account of handing over the child and mentioned that after being injured, he had stopped at a convenience store to buy ice packs before going to the police station. This extra trip clearly took time, making the earlier speculation that the crime was committed first and then a false report was filed less plausible. Additionally, Damon was accompanied to the police station by his mother Sonia and their 2 young children, 2-year-old Elijah and 6-year-old Gabriel. From the time of the incident until they arrived at the police station, they had all been with Damon. Apart from the young Elijah, both Sonia and Gabriel acted as witnesses to support Damon's account. Especially Gabriel, who was only 6 years old, was regarded by the police as the most reliable witness. This was because Damon and Gabriel had a stepfather-son relationship. It was around the time when Gabriel was 4 years old that Nick married Damon, and it was then that Gabriel was adopted by. As the police delved deeper into the background of Nick and Damon's marriage, Damon and Nick met in 2004. It was a year after they had both divorced their previous partners and were eager to start new lives. Nick wanted to provide a stable environment for their son Gabriel, while Damon wanted to fulfill his mother Sonia's wish to become a grandmother. So they got married quickly, and the plan to have a child was also put on the agenda. Before their son Elijah was born, Damon treated Gabriel with great affection, just like he would treat his own biological child. For a while, Nick thought Damon was someone she could trust and was full of hope for their future together. However, things suddenly changed with the arrival of Elijah. Most notably, Nick was almost deprived of her motherly rights. She was not allowed to care for Elijah, and everything related to the child had to be arranged by Sonia. Any slight disobedience from Nick would result in Damon verbally abusing her or even physically assaulting her. At the same time, Damon's attitude toward Gabriel also turned drastically negative, and he began to impose various unreasonable punishments on him, such as making him stand in a corner with a book in each hand, his arms stretched out without allowing after this extreme incident. Nick left Damon and moved into a women's shelter with their child, filing for divorce. During the divorce proceedings, Damon did not stop threatening her in various ways. Each threat was like a sharp blade that pierced Nick's heart, leaving her living in constant fear. However, his domestic violence was just one of the reasons why Nick decided to divorce him. What was even more unacceptable to her was the extremely close relationship between Damon and Sonia, which far exceeded what is normal between a mother and son. They would rub each other's backs while taking showers, and often walked around the house naked. Even more unbelievable was the fact that Sonia would regularly sleep with Damon, while Nick was forced to sleep in another room. On several occasions, Nick even heard inappropriate noises coming from their room. Living in such an environment, Nick felt not only immense shame, but also that she had no value in the family, because all that really mattered to Damon was Sonia, and she was merely seen as a tool for raising their child. Under the combined effects of domestic violence and emotional betrayal, Nick ultimately chose to leave Damon. In fact, Damon's ex-wife Andrea had also experienced similar things with Damon, but she was lucky enough to see as anyone who dared to challenge her authority would face Damon's violent side without hesitation. Now that the police had a thorough understanding of Damon and Sonia, this mother and son naturally became the primary suspects in this case. However, the clues currently available are not sufficient to prove that they committed murder. More direct evidence is needed. Fortunately, the police never believed Damon from the beginning, so they seized his shoes during the first interrogation. Subsequent comparisons confirmed that the tread patterns on Damon's shoes that night matched perfectly with the shoe prints at the crime scene. This became a crucial indirect piece of evidence in the case. Additionally, during the investigation of the scene, the police traced Nick's driving route and found several .45 caliber bullet casings on the right side of a certain section of the road. Based on the distribution of the casings, it was deduced that before forcing Nick's car to stop, the perpetrator must have been sitting in the passenger seat of the following vehicle and firing continuously, causing the casings to be thrown out of the window and scatter on the right side of the road. This is extremely important because it indicates that more than one person was involved in the crime. There must have been 8. Would have been entirely possible for him to catch up with Nick's car at the convenience store, commit the murder, and then arrive at the Montgomery County Police Station before 6:20 p.m. to pretend to report the crime. As for why Gabriel, who was present at the time, never mentioned this, the police speculated that he might have been influenced by Damon or Sonia. After all, Gabriel was only 6 years old and not yet mentally mature. He likely did not understand what had happened and simply repeated what the adults told him. On the 20th of January, 2008, the police temporarily detained Damon and his mother, Sonia, on suspicion of murder. To further strengthen their evidence, they searched their residences and found a strand of hair in a sealed bag in Damon's room. The bag bore Nick's name and the label indicated that the hair had been preserved for 2 years since the second year after their marriage. Although this hair was not direct evidence for conviction, it revealed Damon's pathological obsession with Nick. From a psychological perspective, preserving someone else's hair is a manifestation of strong possessiveness, reflecting Damon's paranoid desire to control Nick for a long time. However, during this search, the police did not find this. James thought she was just speaking out of anger, given that Damon and Nick were in a custody battle at that time. But later he realized she was serious. From that point on, James began to consider the possibility of murder. James also mentioned that Mark owned a .45 caliber pistol and had practiced shooting with it in the backyard of James' house. However, James did not believe Mark could have been involved in the crime because his relationship with Sonia and Damon was not good. Mark had moved out to live on his own at the age of 16 and rarely interacted with them. The reason for this was Sonia's extreme favoritism toward her eldest son, Damon, as well treating Mark harshly. In James' words, Sonia treated Mark like a dog, often complaining that he was disobedient. These accusations left Mark feeling frustrated and gradually alienated him from his family. After learning about this, the police questioned Mark, who admitted to owning a .45 caliber pistol, but claimed it had been stolen a few hours before the crime. He strongly suspected that Sonia and Damon were responsible, as they had been the only ones at his home before the gun went missing. However, they found the bullet left after Sonia and Damon were separated for the longest time in their lives. Unable to see each other, Sonia suffered greatly and even resorted to desperate measures. Attempting to communicate with Damon through other inmates in prison. However, the prison authorities quickly uncovered her plan. In one intercepted note, Sonia wrote some extremely ambiguous words. You will lie in my arms again. I will let you be completely satisfied soon. We will both get what we want. This note not only confirmed their illicit relationship, but also helped the police understand their motives. The police believed that Sonia and Damon wanted to form a complete family. But since they were mother and son and could not have children naturally, Nick unfortunately became a tool for them to achieve their goal. When their plan was successful and they tried to get rid of Nick, they did not expect Nick to insist on obtaining custody of the child, and he ultimately succeeded. This was something Sonia and Damon could never accept. Therefore, in order to regain custody of the child, they plotted this brutal murder. In addition to their efforts to obtain custody, the police also discovered that Sonia had purchased a 50-0 accident insurance policy for Nick, with Sonia herself as the beneficiary. This clearly showed